And of course, you could also be deemed a dissident and likewise completely excluded from the economy. This is why I say we must have parallel currencies in place before this is imposed. And this means parallel currencies that are being accepted in your network, and to broaden your network as much as possible, getting people to accept a parallel currency.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for October 9th through October 16th, 2023, while supplies last. This week we feature two different specials: Silver Morgan Rounds at $2.09 over spot from CNT, and half-ounce Gold Eagles at $1.15 over melt. First, the Morgan Round from CNT celebrates the classic Morgan dollar, but is 4 nines fine and 1 full troy ounce of silver. It's also IRA eligible, and at just $2.09 over spot, a great way to stack 4 nines fine 1 ounce silver at a low premium. Next, the Gold Eagle is one of the most popular gold bullion coins in the world, providing incredible recognizability and investor trust. The half-ounce Eagle adds a further degree of flexibility and liquidity. They come 42 a tube and are available at just $1.15 over melt while supplies last. They're also IRA eligible. And if you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We are privileged to have this returning guest. Author Michael Rectenwald is the author of The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty, Unraveling the Global Agenda. He joins us this Thursday, October 5th, 2023. Michael, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Great to be here, Dan, and thanks for having me.
Our viewers have greatly appreciated, as have I, your visits here in the past where you've walked us through the major points of your book, The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty, Unraveling the Global Agenda, where you've talked about evidence after evidence after evidence that all point to the same inexorable conclusion that there are powers behind the big institutions of our world, not just at the national level, but globally, that are determined to force us into the corral or the cage of doing their bidding and being restricted, restricting our communication, restricting our travel, restricting all kinds of things about our life, taking the fruits of our labors, etc. And the most salient point that I find of the book is not the problem statement, but the proposed solution of what you call the grand refusal or the great refusal, basically 9 steps or so that we can take to opt out of this attempt by the elite to control our futures and that of our family, our children, our grandchildren. In that, there was it just came out this past week, you and I were just discussing a story out of Nigeria and Africa where their central bank digital currency that had been on the rise for some period of time, proposed by the government, proposed by their central bank, was vigorously rejected by popular protests and so on by the people, and looks like it's going down in flames as a failure to launch, in the sense that ordinary people have stood up and are taking action to say, no, we will not tolerate this kind of centralized control. If you want to comment on that particular example, but how it fits into your overall proposed plan that we need to refuse this attempt by the elite to control our lives.
Yes, yeah, well, thank you. The first point in the 9-point plan to refuse the Great Reset is to reject central bank digital currencies. And, the reasons for that are very clear. I mean, this is the most obtrusive and centralized system of money possible. Of course, this would mean total surveillance over all your spending and even the preemption of certain spending and total control system. We know that. So, yeah, this is great news from Nigeria that they're really stamping down on this and not accepting this currency. And this is exactly what we need to do here if and when the time comes that the Biden administration or its subsequent administrations try to impose this on us.
One of the reasons that you have alerted us to the dangers of something as a central bank digital currency is the ability for total surveillance of our financial lives. So much of our lives now, unlike in the past, perhaps our grandparents who got up in the morning, milked the cow, weeded the garden, fed the chickens, did what they need to do, repair the fences, etc. Their lives maybe were not predominated by financial transactions on a daily, hourly basis. It seems that in our current society, where we depend so much on others for our food, all of our clothing, all kinds of things that we need, fuel, etc., that the ability to transact, or at least the ability to store up savings from our earnings. You've warned us again in the past, and perhaps you could touch on that again, why central bank digital currencies are so toxic to our privacy, our freedom, and our financial liberty.
Yes, I mean, so what they amount to is effectively having your bank account with the Fed. There may be an intermediary bank there, but it will be ultimately held at the Fed. And that means that your money, which will be really the Fed's money, because they will have complete control over it. Your so-called money will be at the Fed's control, under the Fed's control. And that means they can see everything you're doing. And of course, since the Fed, although a private bank, is also an agency of the federal government, that means the federal government can see what you're doing. So this is the statist, centralized statist project. The CBDC represents the closing of the totalitarian loop, and really making it utterly impossible to have any financial freedom whatsoever. They could actually preclude transactions of various types, things they don't want you to own, guns, meat, gasoline, you name it, even gas stoves. You know, all of this is on the table because all of these things are being prohibited or spaced out or controlled to a greater extent than ever. And of course, you could also be deemed a dissident and likewise completely excluded from the economy. This is why I say we must have parallel currencies in place before this is imposed. And this means parallel currencies that are being accepted in your network, and to broaden your network as much as possible, getting people to accept a parallel currency. I'm not going to adjudicate which ones you should use. And that's going to be up to the viewers to decide what currencies they think are viable and what their network will accept.
Well, I'll show you one that has raised some eyebrows at a local farmer's market. This is a constitutional 90% silver coinage. These happen to be mercury dimes, but they've got that ring to them that the saying is, "It rings true," describes the sound that silver coins make when jingled together, rather than the clattering sounds that modern slab coins, which have no intrinsic value, make when shaken. So you'll be surprised, folks, if you try an experiment as I did, and that is just ask innocently at your farmer's market if they would take silver rather than paper currency, and you might be surprised the responses you get. Some people will don't know what you're talking about. Others get very excited and are very happy to have real money in exchange for real things.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to. I mean, I was sitting at a Mises Institute event last week, or I spoke at it, I should say. I was sitting at it. I spoken at a Mises Institute event, and they were selling a silver coin with Mises's face, imprinted, and it was like $100. But I said, but this will be worth more than a $100 bill in the future, because they were selling it, I think, for like $50 or something like that. So the point is, our currency is being devalued on a daily basis. This is part of the central bank's ploy to control us and to ruin our financial prospects. And this is, of course, inflation is just overprinting and over supply of money. And so we need to secure value in our money as soon as possible, and to have a parallel currency in place so that you can resist the central bank digital currency.
In your book, and we'll put a picture of that or a link to that in the description of this video, but in your book you talk about all the evidence that points to what the plans are that are being laid for the Great Reset, and all of these 9 points in your Great Refusal that you suggest we should adopt in response to that. And one of the elements of them that are strikingly divergent is that the Great Reset seems to be centralized. It seems to be top-down, globally imposed, that sort of thing. Whereas the Great Refusal, you express as something that's free. In other words, freely chosen by people if they want to do it, and it's distributed or it's everywhere because it's wherever people can make their own free choices to do what they want in their lives. So they're exactly the opposite in many ways, but one of them honors natural law and people's property rights, etc. The other does not. And I just learned before we started this taping that you are actually a candidate running for president under the Libertarian ticket. Can you talk to us more about that?
Sure, certainly. So, I was asked by the Mises Caucus, which is the predominant caucus of the Libertarian Party. They took over the party roughly 2 years ago, and their whole MO was to make the Libertarian Party, the Ron Paulian Party, that is to follow the principles of libertarianism to the core. And that is their criticism of the Fed, of course, the complete and total recognition and support of individual rights and property rights. So my campaign is actually perfectly in line with the grand refusal of my book. And that is, it is a campaign for resisting globalism and centralized power by establishing local footholds where the laws and mandates of the federal government or even the state are refused and nullified at the local level. So the whole point is not to get Michael Rectenwald as president, although that would be nice and certainly quite of a miracle. But the point is to get local control of our governments. And this doesn't necessarily mean by libertarians, but libertarian-minded people at the local level, and resist the central authorities of, the central state, the federal government, resist the Federal Reserve, and, establish an alternate currency or currencies in those local communities and between them. Basically, this is the doctrine of the lesser magistrates. That is, lesser magistrates have the power to refuse central dictates and laws and commands that are unconstitutional or violate our rights.
One of the areas we've seen that principle emerge, and gladly so, in the last decade is with county sheriffs across the country in many different states. They have, the only law enforcement office actually mentioned in the Constitution, by the way, have stood up in many cases and underscored the truth, and that is that they do not work for the governor, they do not work for the mayor, they do not work for the city council, they do not work for the president, they work for the people of their county, and they are sworn to uphold the Constitution. And if a law is passed somewhere on the books, on paper, that contradicts the Constitution, that it's void on its face when it arrives there. And anyway, so we've been encouraged by the standing up of sheriffs with backbone to say that's not going to happen in my county. That's one example. You're talking about that can happen in many local jurisdictions. Are there any specific examples that you would encourage people to get involved in what level and to take what kinds of local actions to make sure that our freedoms are not stolen from us by these global planners?
Yeah, so the principle here is, let me first talk about the principle. They need the globalists, the statists, the central bankers, the central federal government. They need cooperation and complicity at the local level in order to drive their policies into the fabric of society. So they can't do this without us at the without people actually obeying their dictates. And the way to refuse those dictates is by resisting their federal and state even dictates and laws that are unconstitutional or violate our rights. So the point is to take over your local guns, that is the sheriffs and at the county level, at the township level, the police office, the school board, of course, all of the local governmental organs, city councils, all those. We need to run at that level and get the positions at that level. And then we can refuse these dictates and laws that are being foisted on us from above. And even some of these globalist imperatives that are being foisted on us as well.
Yeah, that's the new kid on the block, is these the local authorities, state and national authorities all just appearing to abdicate. Under the color of law and by the under the color of upholding their office, they say, well, we're just following guidelines, and we can't on this channel name all of those specific organizations that have done that. But there are these global organizations that have laid out guidelines, whether it is supposedly in the interest of public health, or whether it's in the interest of public climate or public financial. They keep coming at us, and it seems to be coming from the global level over and over again. And then you have this sort of this abdication and curling over like a dog wanting to get his belly scratched by these local or regional authorities saying, well, we're just following guidelines. Can you talk to us about why that is such an insidious development in our current time, because of the anonymity, the no recourse, the no representation, etc., that are coming from these sort of the nameless, unelected global power centers?
These people at the local level that are enacting globalist imperatives do not recognize the fact that they don't have to follow suit, and that these people have no authority to dictate things to them at the local level, and they have the right and power to refuse. This is what they don't get. They think of the greater magistrates as more powerful, and that whatever they say goes all the way down to the bottom. That's not how this was established or meant to be established, especially in the United States. The federal government was not supposed to have this kind of power, and even the state governments were not supposed to have this kind of power. So the way they're doing this is interesting, actually. The World Economic Forum, in conjunction with the UN, is driving a lot of local governments to abide by Agenda 2030 and to impose 15-minute city ideas on these various townships and towns and cities. And this is a terrible prospect. So people need to become aware, get involved in your city and county and township boards, and go to these meetings and see what's on the agenda and push back against it. There is a great deal of consternation coming from some localities when they notice, in fact, that there's a global imperative that's being foisted on them from the UN and through its NGO partners down into the local level. We need to resist this. You need to find out what's going on at your at these city, township, and county board meetings and see what the agenda is.
One more article I'll put a link to in the description of this video came out about 2 weeks ago from Frontline News. This one was about an organization I was not even aware of called the C40, which is mayors of the nearly 100 largest cities in the world, all setting goals for 2030, 2050, and so on. And they talk about one flight every 3 years being the restriction, or maximum length of airline flight that you can take of 932 miles, which is 1,500 kilometers, or only being able to buy 3 garments of clothing per year, or not being able to eat any meat, and that sort of thing. So this is happening. In other words, this infiltration of global mindset is happening at the mayoral city level as well.
Absolutely. And I got to say this, and I know this isn't a campaign speech, but I'm the only candidate for the Libertarian Party that's actually addressing this global infiltration of government, not only at the national level, all the way down to the city and township levels. There's been infiltration on the part of these globalists to impose their plans. Even something that looks as innocuous, for example, in the city of Pittsburgh, they closed a whole lot of streets and roads for 4 or 5 hours for a bike fest. It turns out that this was all coming out of the UN, effectively, and they were trying to basically suggest that cars should not be driven in the city, and that 15-minute cities should be established. And so this is all being done very surreptitiously in many cases, where it looks like an innocent bike rally type of festivity, but it turns out what they're trying to do is get rid of cars and control people and their mobility. So this is all really happening on the ground, and we need to fight it.
For people who want to follow and support your run for president under the Libertarian ticket, where should they get more information?
That's very easy. Thank you. It's rectheregime.com. rectheregime.com.
We'll put a link to that in the description of this video. And Grateful, Michael Rectenwald, as always, for your presence here. Also, where can people find your book, The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty?
All of my books and essays and so forth are on michaelrectenwald.com. But you can also get them at Amazon. But if you want to get them directly from me, avoid the Big Brother intermediary. You can get them directly from me, and I send out signed copies. michaelrectenwald.com.
Thank you, Michael, for joining us again here on Liberty and Finance.
Thanks for having me, Duncan.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.